I was asked an interesting question. Why aren't folks talking about Auburn?
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. Of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Zach Blackerby, and this is a happy hour edition of the show. Last week in SEC Media Days, I hopped on with Matt Moscona, his radio show down in Baton Rouge. He also is the host of Locked On LSU. And the first question he asked me is an interesting one. Why aren't folks talking about Auburn? We discussed that and a whole lot more.
Why aren't more people talking about Auburn?
Because I don't think they know what to think about Auburn. It's interesting. And Peyton Thorne wasn't great a year ago, but then Hugh Freeze builds around him and gives him a path where it's a little bit easier for him to be productive. So to me, I don't think people know what to think about Auburn. I mean, I talk about Auburn for hours every day, and I don't fully know what to expect this season.
Okay. Returning a starting quarterback is obviously a big deal.
Yeah.
And Hugh Freeze is a great offensive coach. Am I missing that? Like, do we still respect Hugh Freeze as one of the best offensive minds in football? Is that an understood thing still?
It's just so weird because he took a year off of it. He wasn't involved in Auburn's game plan last year. He kind of put it all on Philip Montgomery. That was a train wreck, an absolute disaster. And so now he says, okay, this is my offense. You know, he goes and gets Derek Nix from Ole Miss. They coached together a long time ago at Ole Miss. But this is Hugh Freeze's offense. It's just he said, hey, I wanted to focus so much on recruiting and rebuilding this roster that he wasn't as involved in the offensive game plan. So I think the reason that people have cooled off on that is because we didn't see it a year ago.
If Auburn is a hypothetical, but I'm just curious your opinion on it.
Sure.
If Alabama doesn't convert the 4th and 31.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Right?
All right.
And Auburn beats Alabama year one under Hugh Freeze.
Yeah, totally.
How different is the feeling around Auburn, the conversation? Because it's still a 7-5 season then, right? Because it was 6-6, lost the bowl game. So a 7-5 season with a win over Bama. How different is the conversation around Auburn if they get the stop on 4th and 31?
I mean, there are so many what ifs with this. What if they don't, crap themselves against New Mexico State?
Yeah.
What if they use bracket coverage on, Brock Bowers a year ago? They beat Georgia. I mean, they were so close in so many games. And then obviously the New Mexico State loss is historically bad. He'll have to wear that for the rest of his career. But I mean, I think that's kind of saying like Auburn's roster was really bad last year. And they were close. They were close. And so it kind of makes you think, okay, the schedule's easier for Auburn this year. But to answer your question, like if you beat Bama, I think the mood around the program is different. I think the narrative has totally changed.
Why? Zach Blackerby is with us, Locked on Auburn. Make sure you subscribe wherever you get podcasts. You want Auburn news, that's where you go. Why do we feel like it will be different this year?
I think Hugh Freeze being a part of the offense is a big part of it. I think Cam Coleman being here. Cam Coleman, the freshman wide receiver, is bringing something to Auburn that Auburn, I don't think, has ever had. Haven't had in a long time. I don't think they've ever had a true wide receiver one like Cam Coleman.
Who's widely understood to be the best wide receiver in Auburn history? When Auburn people have that convo.
We don't really, that's a really low bar. There's not really like a clear number one receiver when you look at Auburn history. Terry Beasley, I guess it's been 2 decades since he's played. So
that's wild, man. Yeah. So Terry Beasley.
Auburn hasn't had a 1,000-yard receiver in like 25 years, I think.
Karsten, are you serious?
It's insane.
Karsten Bailey. I guess it's always been the great running backs. Seth Williams, Courtney Taylor, Emory Blake. I'm looking for an NFL receiver on this list.
You're not going to find it. I mean, Darius Slayton is okay for the Giants, right? But he couldn't catch anything when he was at Auburn.
This is Auburn's. This is fascinating, man. So Terry Beasley, who played in the late 60s, early 70s, Tyrone Goodson, Karsten Bailey, Seth Williams, Courtney Taylor, Emory Blake, Frank Sanders, Darvin Adams, Freddie Wygand, Lawyer Tillman, Sammy Coates, Darius Slayton, Rogerius Smith, Yeah, man. Like,
it's wild. That bar of like Auburn they've never really had a number one wide receiver in my lifetime.
Do you want to look at LSU's list?
Let's just go the last 5 years.
Right. I mean,
since Joe Burrow was there.
But isn't
right?
that one? But that's the one, like the state of Louisiana produces amazing receivers. It's so interesting. Like, so actually the Cam Coleman thought isn't wrong.
Hugh Freeze going to get Cam Coleman and then Perry Thompson. There's more buzz around Cam because he went through spring. You know, how quickly can a freshman wide receiver impact your offense without going through spring? I think that's pretty tough. You don't see it that often, but him bringing in those two guys, like, it's just different. Like, Auburn hasn't had guys like that before. And so you bring in those guys to help Peyton Thorne. You go out and get Keandre Lambert-Smith, who was productive at Penn State during his career there at wide receiver. Robert Lewis, who I think is extremely underrated. He was very productive at Georgia State. You got him in. He looked really good this spring. Auburn has 4 or 5 guys, new guys that are playing receiver that are better than anything they had to throw to a year ago. And then Rivaldo Fairweather, I think, is going to be one of the best tight ends in the SEC.
More with Moscona in just a moment. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Game Time is the best way to buy tickets, whether it's for a sporting event, a concert, a comedy show. It doesn't matter what it is. Game Time has you covered. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which of course makes getting tickets faster and even easier. The prices on the Game Time app, they actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. They've got killer last minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. So take the guesswork out of it with the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed.
Is Jarquez Hunter the best running back in the league?
I think he's top 2 or 3. I think he's top 2 or 3 for sure. I mean, you talk about Auburn kind of always having the good running backs.
Yeah.
Jarquez Hunter's got a chance to finish top 5 on that list when you talk about I think he's like 1,100 yards away or something like that. So, yeah, Jarquez Hunter's up there for sure.
We saw him obviously in Baton Rouge as a freshman and had a really special night. And with Quinshon Judkins now at Ohio State, I probably would take Jarquez Hunter as the best running back in the league right now.
I mean, he's worthy of it for sure. He can do so many different things. He's an effective pass catcher. He's great at, blitz pickup. And then obviously he's so physical and he's got that breakaway speed too. He's a complete back.
Zach Blackerby, Locked on Auburn, is when I think of Auburn, I always think of running backs, and then I think of like really good defensive lines.
Sure.
Is the defense going to be any good?
I think the back 7 is going to be really, really solid. They got a nice mix of experience and just, raw talent with youth. Kayan Lee is a corner that I'm really, really high on. He's going to be probably the number 1 corner when it's all said and done. The defensive line, they went out and added a bunch of role players, guys that were role players, solid players, but not stars at other places. So they need somebody to step up. They're bringing Keldrick Falk this week, the first time they've ever brought a true sophomore to SEC Media Days. So you kind of got the feeling that they think it's going to be him by giving him this platform and opportunity to represent Auburn. So he's certainly the guy to watch. He's very, very important.
Look at the schedule with me. What stands out on Auburn's schedule?
No LSU.
I was going to ask about that, but
it's so strange.
I agree, and you and I've had this convo, and my audience, like everybody knows this about me. LSU, and not having a traditional rival, LSU will never have an Auburn, Alabama. It'll never have an Egg Bowl. You'll never have that thing. So a lot of it's generational based on who was the team at the time. So for like my grandfather, he'd tell you Ole Miss. For my dad, he'd probably look at Alabama because of Bear in the 70s and all that. For me, like my coming of age was watching LSU lose the interception game, win the bring back the magic game in 95, the barn burner in 96, the Cecil Collins game in 97. I mean, you can go through the list of all the amazing games.
Every game in the series was so dramatic and just not normal. It's an incredible rivalry.
So it's my favorite one that LSU plays.
I'm with you.
Because that's what I grew up in. Bama has meant more lately.
Sure.
Florida in the 6, 7, 8 range when they were kind of volleying national championships they were massive games at LSU in Florida. So like there's kids, I say kids, but there's probably 20, 25-year-olds that would tell you Florida's the biggest game because that's what they came up in.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm bummed that they're not playing Auburn, but I understand, man, you can't make an omelet without breaking a few eggs, and that's part of what you sacrifice. But specifically on this slate, what is the thing that jumps out where you go, that's the part where you got to be mindful?
Well, I mean, you don't play a home game in October. You go to Georgia bye week, to Missouri, and to Kentucky. And Auburn's got to find a way to win at least one of those. And I think the most likely one is in Lexington, I would guess. But obviously, if you can still win against Missouri, who's probably going to be top 10 at that point, you certainly take that. Starting out, I mean, Auburn's in a prime spot, I think, to start off 4-0 with Alabama, A&M, Cal, New Mexico, and Arkansas. Them hosting Oklahoma, I think, is the most important game on their schedule, because if they go 5-0, all of a sudden they're in a real, that over-under of 7.5 wins. If you win your first 5, that puts you in a really good spot to do that. It's going to be Oklahoma's first road game in the conference. I think all the pressure's going to be on Oklahoma. That's an important one.
Can Auburn, so would you just play, Auburn should start 4-0.
Right, that's not crazy.
And then get Oklahoma at home. If you win that, you're 5-0. Then you've got the 3 games we mentioned, at Georgia, at Missouri, at Kentucky. Even if you go 1-2, you're a 2-loss team right there. You beat Vandy at home. You get an open date before you host ULM, and then you get A&M and the Iron Bowl. I mean,
it's the easiest schedule Auburn's had in a long time.
Is 10-2 is that something people are? Is that the ceiling?
I think so.
Is it realistic?
I mean, you just went through it. What is Oklahoma? I'm not as high on Oklahoma as a lot of people are. And talking to a lot of Oklahoma media here this week, they're replacing an offensive line. They've got a new quarterback. You don't just fix that. I mean, how often has that really worked? You don't really see that to be the recipe to succeed. And then, obviously A&M at home is super, super crucial. But, Auburn's great at home. It's just, what can they do on the road? Can you beat a Missouri? Can you beat a Kentucky away from Jordan-Hare Stadium?
Zach Blackerby, Locked on Auburn. Appreciate it, man.
Hey, always great to chat with the GOAT.
Thank you to Matt Moscona. Be sure to check out Locked on LSU for your second listen. He does an outstanding job over there. Please like the video. Please subscribe. We'll see you tomorrow. This has been Locked on Auburn.